The night was calm over the small human colony, the kind of night when the stars seemed close enough for children to touch. The orphanage stood at the center of the colony, its windows glowing with warm light. Inside, the children laughed, played, and listened to stories read by the caretakers. For them, this world was safe, far from war, far from fear. The colony had no armies, no weapons, just families and volunteers trying to give the orphans a life worth living. But then the sky began to change. At first it was only a faint red glow at the horizon, like the sunrise had come too early. The children pressed their little faces against the glass, pointing at the strange light with curiosity. The caretakers looked at one another, their smiles fading. They had seen news of alien raids on other colonies, but deep in their hearts they told themselves it would never happen here. This place was too small, too far, too unimportant. Yet the red grew brighter, spreading across the heavens. The first explosion came without warning, a thunder that shook the ground and shattered windows. The children screamed as the roof trembled and dust rained from the ceiling. Outside, fireballs streaked down, tearing into homes, towers, and fields. The alien warships had arrived, black silhouettes against the burning sky. Their weapons lit the night with cruel brilliance. The caretakers rushed to shield the children, grabbing them, pulling them into basements and corners, but the bombardment was merciless. Every explosion tore another piece from the colony. Every blast lit the air with deadly sparks. The orphanage shook as a missile struck close by. The walls cracked, pictures fell, and screams filled the air. One boy, no more than 12, broke free from the arms of his caretaker. He stumbled to the small radio console in the corner, his hands shaking. He had seen the soldiers use it once when they visited the colony. He pressed buttons, not knowing if they worked. He shouted into the mic, his voice trembling. "Help us. Please, anyone. They are bombing us, the children, please." Static crackled. Maybe no one would hear. Maybe the signal was too weak, but he kept shouting as tears ran down his face. Outside, the aliens had no mercy. Their ships fired again and again, burning fields, tearing homes, crushing lives beneath falling steel. This was not war. It was slaughter. They wanted fear, they wanted despair, and they wanted humanity to watch. The colony defense sirens wailed too late. The system was old and slow. By the time the alarm rang, half the colony was already in ruins. Mothers carried children through the fire. Fathers tried to dig loved ones from the rubble. But the orphanage was hit hardest. The attackers seemed to target it as if they knew, as if they wanted to crush hope itself. The boy at the radio screamed as the console sparked and died. The roof above him cracked, wood splintered, and fire spread across the hall. The caretakers tried to gather the children into the cellar, but smoke made it impossible to breathe. The air stank of burning plastic and scorched flesh. The younger ones cried out for their mothers who were not there. Above the colony, alien commanders watched from the safety of their ships, their voices cold. They mocked the weakness of humans. They laughed at the sight of children running in terror. To them, this was a message, a lesson that humans should never defy them again. But even as the orphanage fell, even as the roof collapsed in fire, the signal had gone out. Faint, weak, but traveling across the stars, it carried the voice of a frightened boy begging for help. It carried the sound of explosions, the cry of humanity's children under attack. And somewhere, in the darkness of space, someone would hear. The night that began with laughter ended in ashes. The sky glowed red, not from sunsets or lanterns, but from burning ships and broken homes. Silence crept across the ruins as flames consumed the orphanage. Bodies lay still among the debris. Only a handful survived, and they could do nothing but watch the fires climb into the heavens. Yet in that silence, something else was born. Far away, the message was received, decoded, and replayed. Men and women in Earth's war rooms listened in frozen silence. They heard the voice of the boy. They heard the last cries of the orphanage. And in that moment, their faces hardened. The children of Earth had been attacked, and there would be no forgiveness. The aliens thought they had ended hope. They thought they had silenced a small colony, but instead, they had awakened something that would burn brighter than fire. The galaxy would soon learn what it meant to hurt humanity, because Earth was listening, and Earth would answer. The flames rose high into the night, painting the horizon blood red. The colony was gone, the orphanage destroyed, but the boys' cry would echo through the stars, and in that cry the seeds of war were planted. The news of the orphanage massacre spread faster than light. It traveled on military channels, through merchant ships, across secret networks, and into the heart of Earth itself. The recording of the boy's desperate voice was played again and again. Leaders, soldiers, and even ordinary citizens could not escape the sound. His trembling words. "Please help. They are bombing us. The children." Pierced through every wall of power, no one could forget it. Deep beneath the oceans of Earth, in a hidden chamber called the Council of Ashes, the leaders of humanity gathered. The chamber was carved from black stone and armored steel. Screens flickered with battle reports, and the air was heavy with smoke from long hours of debate. Presidents, admirals, generals, and governors sat around a long table, their faces pale but their eyes burning. They knew this was not a simple raid. It was an insult, a challenge, a strike meant to break humanity's heart. At the head of the table, Admiral Harris stood, his uniform sharp, his voice iron. He had fought in dozens of battles, he had seen colonies rise and fall, but even he trembled with rage. "They slaughtered our children," he said, his words echoing like a hammer. "They didn't just kill, they wanted us to hear it, to watch it, to feel powerless. They wanted to remind us of fear, but instead they have given us fire." The council sat in silence for a moment. No one spoke, but the tension in the air was thick. A governor from Mars slammed her fist on the table. "We cannot ignore this. If we do, then every colony, every human settlement will live in terror. Today it was the orphanage. Tomorrow it will be our cities, our families." She looked at the others with blazing eyes. "We must answer." But there were voices of caution too. An elder politician leaned forward, his voice heavy with worry. "The enemy empire is vast. Their fleets are endless. If we strike now, without caution, we may bring total war to every corner of our space. Billions could die." His words shook some in the chamber, but not all. Admiral Harris rose again, this time his voice softer but sharper. "Billions will die if we stay silent. The galaxy must know that humanity will not allow this. Our silence will invite more blood, more slaughter. But if we rise, if we answer with all our strength, they will think twice before ever targeting our children again." His hand pressed down on the table, steady and unshaken. Behind him, a massive screen flickered to life, showing the secret shipyards hidden in the asteroid belts. Giant shadows of dreadnoughts rested there, silent and waiting, their hulls dark as if carved from night itself. Humanity had kept them hidden, building them in silence while the galaxy thought Earth was weak. "We have ships they don't know about," Harris continued. "We have weapons no one has seen. If we unleash them now, the galaxy will learn that Earth is not prey, Earth is the hunter." Whispers spread across the council. Commanders leaned in close to each other, weighing the cost, weighing the blood, weighing the fire that burned in their chests. Then the image of the orphanage appeared on the screen. Ruins glowing red, small bodies covered in ash. The boys' final cry echoing one last time. No one spoke after that. The silence was enough. Decisions had already been made. At last the president of Earth stood, her voice calm but trembling with controlled rage. "There will be no forgiveness," she said. "There will be no peace. Not until every alien who ordered this massacre learns what it means to harm humanity. We will answer, not with whispers, not with warnings, but with fire." The council erupted, not in chaos but in agreement. Admirals stood and saluted. Governors nodded grimly. Soldiers clenched their fists. The vote was unanimous. The war would begin. Orders were sent and encrypted, bursts across the system. Hidden fleets awakened. Hangars opened and war factories roared to life. For years humanity had hidden its true strength, waiting for the day it might be needed. Now the day had come. Pilots raced to their ships. Engineers fueled reactors. Crews kissed their families goodbye. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as humanity prepared to rise. But even as the war machines awakened, the council knew one thing clearly. This was not just about war. It was about a promise. Humanity had been wounded before, beaten, enslaved, mocked by empires, but never had they attacked humanity's children so openly. That line had been crossed, and once crossed, it could never be undone. Somewhere deep in the chamber, Admiral Harris whispered, as he stared at the orphanage footage one last time. "You wanted us to fear you." His voice was cold as steel. "But you will fear us." And as the meeting ended, the council chamber lights dimmed, the screens lit with deployment orders, coordinates, and names of fleets. The war had begun before. The first shot was fired. The galaxy did not yet know it, but humanity's answer was already on its way. The Council of Ashes had spoken. Earth would rise, Earth would burn its enemies, and the stars would soon echo with the roar of human vengeance. From the moment the Council of Ashes ended, the silent shipyards of humanity came alive. Hidden in the shadows of asteroids and drifting ice fields, titanic shapes began to stir. They were not small vessels, not scouts or patrols, but warships so large they blotted out the stars when they moved. Their armored hulls were black as night, and their cannons were forged to pierce the strongest shields in the galaxy. The galaxy had long believed Earth weak, fragile, too busy, healing from its old wars to build anything new. Alien empires laughed at the thought of human fleets. To them, humanity's ships were nothing more than outdated cruisers and patched freighters, but the dreadnoughts that now stirred in silence were proof of how wrong they were. These monsters of steel had been built in secret piece by piece, while the galaxy turned its gaze elsewhere. They were humanity's hidden teeth, and now they would bite. Crews flooded the decks, pilots hurried through steel corridors. Engineers checked reactor cores glowing like caged suns. Everywhere there was movement, urgency, and rage. For these men and women were not fighting for conquest or greed. They were fighting for the children who had been murdered, for the orphanage burned to ash, for the boy's trembling voice carried across the stars. Each sailor, each soldier, each mechanic carried that memory inside their hearts, and it burned hotter than any reactor. Admiral Harris walked the bridge of the flagship, a dreadnought so massive it dwarfed anything the aliens had ever faced. Its main cannon stretched like the barrel of a god's weapon, designed to crack open battle stations with a single shot. Harris looked at the faces of his crew, young, old, scarred, tired, yet all of them steady. "We are no longer hidden," he said, his voice deep, carrying through the intercom to every deck. "We sail not for glory, but for justice. We sail for the children whose cries were silenced. We will not stop. We will not bend. We will not forgive." His words rippled like fire, met with the pounding fists of his crew against steel. The first dreadnought rose from the asteroid belt, then another, then a dozen, their engines igniting with blue fire. The void trembled as one by one they emerged. Carriers followed, releasing wings of fighters that darted like angry sparks. Cruisers and destroyers formed protective screens around the giants. Humanity's fleet was no longer whispers or rumors. It was real, it was alive, and it was terrifying. Far away, alien scouts watched in disbelief, their reports stuttered with fear. The humans, they built monsters. Their transmissions carried back to their empire. But even as the words left their lips, the human fleet activated jamming signals, cutting them off, leaving only silence. Humanity wanted the galaxy to wonder, to panic, to fear. Inside the hangars, fighter pilots climbed into their cockpits. Many of them carried photographs taped to their dashboards, pictures of the orphanage ruins, of children smiling in better days, of their own families back home. One pilot whispered before launch, "This one's for you, little ones." He closed the canopy, his hands steady on the controls. Across the fleet, weapon systems came online. Railguns slid into place, missile silos opened like the jaws of beasts. Plasma batteries hummed with lethal energy. In the dark of space, humanity's vengeance pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, unstoppable. On Earth, billions watched the launch. Through secure feeds, entire cities fell silent as the dreadnoughts departed. Mothers wept, fathers clenched fists, children raised their hands in salute. Humanity was united as never before. The pain of the orphanage massacre had cut deep, but now it bound them together. One people, one purpose, one fire. Admiral Harris gave the final order. "Prepare for jump." Lights dimmed across the fleet as hyperspace engines roared awake. Space around them bent, stretched, and tore. The stars blurred into rivers of light. The fleet vanished, leaving only silence behind. Their destination was no secret. They were heading directly into enemy space, not to hide, not to probe, but to strike at the throat. Their path cut through the alien frontier, through supply stations and deep into the Empire's veins. It was a message as much as a mission. Humanity would not cower. Humanity would come to them. In alien command halls, panic spread. Reports of dreadnoughts, carriers, and endless swarms of fighters arrived one after another. Commanders who had once laughed at human weakness now argued in fear. Some claimed the reports were lies, tricks, exaggerations, but others saw the truth. They saw the flames rising. "The humans are not what we thought," one whispered. "They are something else, something dangerous." But the dreadnoughts did not care about fear or doubt. They cared only about the mission, to burn the empire that dared strike their children, to make sure no one in the galaxy would ever forget what Earth could do. And as the fleet roared through hyperspace, the memory of the red sky, the orphanage, in flames, and the boy's desperate voice followed them. It was not just fuel, it was destiny, humanity's destiny, and the aliens would soon feel its fire. The human fleet tore through hyperspace like a storm, each dreadnought dragging a trail of blue fire in its wake. When the stars snapped back into place, they were no longer in the safety of their own territory. They had jumped straight into the enemy's throat. Alien patrol fleets were scattered through the sector, ships armed with plasma cannons and heavy shields. Their commanders were relaxed, laughing in their bridges. They believed human ships were still old, weak, and easy to crush. But the darkness shifted, and out of the void emerged shapes that blotted out suns. One by one, the dreadnoughts appeared, their black hulls reflecting faint starlight, their engines pulsing with deep thunder. Around them swarmed fighters and escorts like sparks around a raging forge. The patrol fleets froze. Laughter died on alien lips. Their sensors screamed warnings. "Identify." Unknown human vessels detected, an alien officer stammered, his voice cracking. But before the command could even reach their high council, the humans moved. Admiral Harris gave the order in a voice calm as ice. "Weapons free." The first dreadnought fired, its railgun roaring like the heart of a god. The slug tore through space faster than light. It slammed into an alien cruiser, and the ship split apart in an instant, fire and bodies scattering into the void. Another dreadnought fired a plasma lance, a beam of white fire that melted through 3 destroyers at once. The battle had begun. Alien captains shouted orders, scrambling to form defensive lines, but the human fleet had come prepared. Missile bays opened across the dreadnoughts, releasing storms of guided death. Each warhead tracked its target with precision, weaving through counterfire, striking engines, reactors, and bridges. Explosions dotted the stars like a chain of suns. Fighter wings screamed forward, small but deadly. They darted between alien frigates, their cannons tearing through armor, their pilots flying with fury. Each remembered the orphanage, each remembered the children. Their rage sharpened every move. Alien fighters swarmed to meet them, and the void filled with fire and trails of wreckage. On the bridge of his ship, Admiral Harris stood unshaken, his eyes locked on the unfolding slaughter. "They thought we were weak," he murmured. "Show them how wrong they are." His officers obeyed without hesitation. Targeting data streamed across their screens, each command precise, cold, unstoppable. The aliens fought desperately, but panic spread faster than orders. Their ships were designed for intimidation, not for wars against monsters like these. Dreadnought cannons punched through shields as if they were paper. Plasma torpedoes burned through armor, and in less than an hour, half the patrol fleet was gone. A lone alien flagship tried to retreat, its engines flaring, but humanity's vengeance did not allow escape. A human carrier released bombers, heavy ships armed with bunker-busting payloads. They struck the fleeing flagship again and again until its core went critical. The explosion ripped across the battlefield, lighting up the void in a blinding wave. Still, one transmission escaped, carried by a small scout that fled into the darkness, its message simple but filled with terror. The humans are coming." It repeated the words again and again until the signal reached the alien empire's capital. Back on the battlefield, silence began to settle. Wreckage drifted through the stars, glowing with fire. Human ships moved slowly among the remains, finishing stragglers, pulling their fighters back. The dreadnoughts floated in a formation of steel and wrath, their hulls untouched, their weapons still hot. They had not just won, they had dominated. On the bridge, Harris listened to casualty reports. Human losses were small compared to the devastation they had delivered, but every name still weighed heavy on him. He nodded grimly. "Prepare to move forward," he ordered. This was only the beginning. His officers saluted. The fleet engines hummed again. Far away in alien command centers, panic broke out. The reports were clear. The humans had unleashed weapons no one expected. Entire fleets were gone in minutes. One alien leader shouted in fear, "They are demons, not humans, demons made of fire and steel." Others tried to argue it was only luck, only a small fleet. But deep in their hearts they knew the humans were coming, and nothing could stop them. In the silence of space among the burning ruins of alien ships, the human fleet prepared for its next strike. The orphans' cries still echoed in their minds. This was not just war, it was vengeance. It was justice. And Earth would not stop until the galaxy understood. The human fleet pressed deeper into alien space, their engines burning trails of blue fire behind them. Wreckage of patrol fleets floated in their wake, and wherever they passed, silence followed. No merchant ships dared to travel, no signals dared to transmit. It was as if a storm had swept across the stars, leaving only fear behind. The dreadnoughts moved like hunters, steady and merciless, their destination clear, the alien hive world, the very nest where the order had been given to bomb the orphanage. For centuries, the hive world had been a place of pride. Massive towers of black stone and living metal rose from its surface. Endless swarms of ships filled its orbit, and deep, within its heart, alien leaders gathered, their council chambers filled with arrogance and cruelty. Here they had laughed when news came of human suffering. Here they had ordered the skies over the orphanage turned red. Now the humans were coming. For them, from the bridge of his dreadnought, Admiral Harris looked at the holomap. The hive world glowed red at its center, a beacon of their enemy's strength. His voice was steady, but fire burned in his eyes. "They chose to strike at our children," he said. "Now we strike at their heart. Prepare the fleet." The dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the hive system. Alien defenders were already there. Fleets of battleships and carriers forming rings of steel around their world. Their numbers were vast. Hundreds of ships bristling with weapons. Alien commanders barked orders with confidence. "Humans will break here," they told their crews. "They cannot stand against the might of the hive." But the humans did not flinch. The dreadnoughts moved forward, their cannons already glowing with lethal energy. Wings of fighters poured out of carriers, swarming like angry hornets. The silence before battle lasted only seconds. Then the void exploded with fire. Alien fleets rushed to meet the humans, plasma beams cut through space. Missiles screamed toward their targets. But the dreadnoughts held, their shields blazing like suns, their armor shrugging off the first storm. Then they answered. Railguns fired, plasma lances sliced through cruisers, torpedoes detonated inside alien formations. In moments, the perfect defense line fractured. Screams filled alien comm channels. On the surface of the hive world, civilians looked up at the sky in horror. Their shields glowed as the first human bombardment struck orbital defenses. Towers collapsed, shipyards burned. For the first time in generations, the hive trembled. Admiral Harris gave his orders with precision. Target shipyards, command centers, fuel depots, leave them blind, leave them bleeding. Dreadnoughts shifted formation, their massive guns focusing fire. Every strike was like a hammer smashing glass. Alien stations burst into flames. Their fleets reeled, unable to regroup. Human bombers broke through the lines, diving toward the planet, their payloads guided by coordinates from intelligent satellites. Precision strikes lit up the surface. Command bunkers shattered. Weapons factories went dark. Alien commanders screamed as their war machines were silenced one by one. But the humans did not strike blindly. Harris made it clear. No strikes on civilian shelters. This is not their war. This is justice for those who gave the order. His voice carried across the fleet, firm and unyielding. The aliens had bombed children without mercy, but the humans would not become monsters. Their wrath was aimed only at the guilty. Still, the scale of the destruction was overwhelming. Orbit was a sea of wreckage. The ground shook as towers toppled. The Hive's proud banners burned. Their fleets tried again and again to push back. But every charge met the unstoppable wall of human steel. Dreadnoughts fired in perfect rhythm. Carriers unleashed wave after wave of fighters, cruisers, and destroyers shielded their giants with relentless fire. In the alien council chamber, panic replaced arrogance. Their leaders shouted at one another. Some demanded surrender, others screamed for retaliation, but none could hide their fear. One whispered words none dared repeat. "We have awakened. Demons." Meanwhile, on the bridge of the flagship, Harris stood with his officers. Reports streamed in, targets destroyed, enemy fleets shattered. His crew looked to him, their faces lit by the glow of burning ships outside the viewport. Harris spoke only once, his voice heavy. "This is for the children." Silence followed, not because his crew disagreed, but because they all felt it, deep in their bones. Hours passed, and the Hive world's orbit was no longer a fortress. It was a graveyard. Wreckage drifted, fires burned in the atmosphere, smoke and ash rose like black rivers. The human fleet stood unchallenged, their vengeance written across the sky. The galaxy was watching. Across hidden channels and merchant signals, news spread. The humans had struck the Hive, the unshakable center of their enemy's empire, and they had burned it. One message echoed again and again, whispered in fear. The humans are not prey. The humans are fire. Yet Harris knew this was only the beginning. The Hive was crippled, but not dead. There would be more battles, more blood. But tonight humanity had shown the galaxy what it meant to strike at their children. Tonight Earth had answered, and on the ruined world below, alien survivors stared at the burning skies. They had mocked the humans once, but now they prayed the fire would not come for them next. The Hive world still burned. Black smoke rising from shattered towers, wreckage of warships glowing like dying. Stars in orbit, but Admiral Harris did not allow his fleet to rest. The Council's orders were clear, and his own heart was heavier than steel. This war was not only strategy, it was retribution. Every dreadnought's screens lit up with the same recording before the next assault. The boy's trembling voice, crying into the radio, begging for help. His words filled every deck, every corridor, every heart. Crews listened in silence, fists clenched, jaws set. Even the hardest soldiers blinked back tears. "This is why we fight," Harris told them. "This is why we burn their fleets. This is why we do not stop." His voice carried like thunder, and when the recording ended, the fleet was no longer a collection of ships. It was one beating heart of fire. Alien reinforcements poured in from the outer systems, desperate fleets gathering to defend their capital. Thousands of ships formed into chaotic lines. Commanders barked orders, some tried to rally courage, others demanded retreat. But fear weighed on them all. They had never seen such vengeance, never seen humans fight like this. Still, they came, believing numbers could crush the humans. The void erupted once more. Alien fleets surged forward like waves, but the dreadnoughts stood as cliffs of iron. Their railguns boomed, plasma lances sliced open cruisers, swarms of missiles streaked across the darkness, carving through defenses. Fighters dove into the chaos, dogfights flashing like lightning storms. Human pilots shouted oaths of vengeance as they struck. Every kill was for the children they could not save. Admiral Harris paced the bridge, his voice sharp as a blade. "Break their center. Cut them into pieces." The dreadnoughts shifted, cannons turning in unison. They fired in perfect rhythm, their slugs tearing holes through the enemy's formation. Alien ships spun out of control, colliding with each other. Explosions rolled across the battlefield, but the aliens fought with desperation. Swarms of their smaller ships clawed at the human formation, trying to pierce shields, trying to overwhelm. One destroyer took heavy damage, flames racing across its decks. Still its crew fought on, guns blazing until the very last moment. Harris lowered his head for only a second when the ship finally broke apart. Then his jaw tightened. Make them pay. Human bombers swept past, dropping payloads that tore open enemy carriers. Fighters followed, flooding into the gaps. The battle became a storm of steel and fire. Whole alien squadrons vanished in seconds, their leaders shouting in panic as they realized nothing they threw at the humans could hold. On the surface below, the hive world screamed. Human precision strikes continued. Bunkers, factories, and shipyards erupted one after another. Alien. Commanders watched in despair as centuries of power crumbled in hours. They fight like demons, one whispered, his hands shaking. They fight as if death itself sails their ships. In the galaxy beyond, broadcasts leaked through hidden channels. Neutral systems watched the destruction in terror. Merchants whispered in fear. The humans have awakened. News of the Orphanage massacre was played side by side with images of burning alien capitals, and many who once mocked humanity now trembled. Back on the flagship, Harris stood before the giant viewport, the hive world burning below. Alien fleets in ruins above, his officers waiting for orders. "We are not finished," he said. "We strike until the ones who ordered the massacre are nothing but ash." His voice carried through the fleet, unshakable, unrelenting. The dreadnoughts advanced again, their guns glowing. Another alien fleet shattered, another command tower. Erased, the hive's defenses were crumbling faster than anyone thought possible. Harris knew why. Humans were not fighting only for victory. They were fighting for memory, for justice, for the children who never had a chance to grow. And as the fires rose higher, the orphanage's final cry echoed through the stars. No longer a plea for help, but a promise carried by every human heart. This was humanity's retribution in fire, and it would not stop until the galaxy understood. The battlefield around the hive world had become a graveyard. Alien ships drifted broken and burning, their wreckage scattering across orbit like shattered bones. The skies that once roared with the pride of their empire were now silent. But for the steady hum of human engines, the dreadnoughts loomed like mountains of steel, their weapons still glowing from the fury they had unleashed. Silence spread not only here but across the galaxy. Whispers of Earth's wrath carried from system to system. In alien capitals far from the hive, panic gripped the ruling council. Their hollow screens flickered with reports of annihilation. Fleets destroyed, fortresses shattered, command chains collapsing. Voices rose in anger, fear, and despair. Some demanded retaliation, others cried for surrender, but no one denied the truth: their empire was breaking, and the humans had done it in weeks, not years. Back on the human flagship, Admiral Harris stood on the bridge, his crew waiting in silence outside the viewport. The hive world still burned, pillars of smoke rising into the dark. Harris's voice was calm, but edged with iron. "Transmit no reply to their peace offers," he ordered. "They wanted us. To bow in fear, they wanted us broken. But the blood of our children cannot be bargained away." His officers nodded, their faces grim. A sudden transmission reached the fleet. The alien leadership, voices trembling, begged for negotiations. They promised reparations. They swore they would never touch another human world. But Harris shook his head. "Tell them," he said coldly, "that humanity remembers." The message was simple, final, and devastating. Across the fleet, the men and women who had carried the memory of the Orphanage massacre felt their purpose burn brighter. This was no longer only a battle. It was justice carved into the stars. And so the fleet moved again, striking at shipyards, burning convoys, leaving the empire with nothing but ruins. Every strike carried the same message: there would be no forgiveness. Alien civilians across their empire watched helplessly as broadcasts leaked through. Human dreadnoughts cutting through fleets, cities lit in fire, capitals silenced. Many whispered in fear that the humans were not people at all, but spirits of vengeance wearing steel. They are not fighting for land or power. One alien priest muttered, "They are fighting for memory and nothing can stop them." The galaxy trembled. Neutral worlds, merchants, and even rival empires all received the same scattered transmissions, grainy images of dreadnoughts firing, railguns that split battleships in half, of alien admirals screaming before their fleets went dark, of human fleets moving forward like storms that could not be contained. No one laughed at humanity anymore. No one dismissed them as weak. On the bridge, Harris stood alone for a moment, his hand resting against the cold glass of the viewport. He thought of the boy whose voice had reached Earth, the boy who had begged for help as fire consumed his orphanage. Harris closed his eyes, and for a moment he saw not burning ships, but the small faces of children, innocent, hopeful, silenced too soon. He opened his eyes again, and his resolve hardened. "Let the stars fall silent," he whispered. "Let them all know what happens when you harm our children." The dreadnoughts moved without hesitation. Every alien fleet that tried to regroup was destroyed. Every command bunker that dared issue orders was silenced. One by one, the voices of the Empire vanished, replaced by silence. It spread across their systems like a shadow. No fleets, no leaders, only wreckage and smoke. When the last major fleet collapsed, Harris received a final, desperate transmission, a broken voice of an alien admiral. "Please, we cannot fight you, we cannot win. You are not human, you are fire, and fire consumes everything." The transmission ended in static. Moments later, their ships vanished in explosions, their last words left echoing in the void. Back on Earth, the news of victory reached every city. Billions stood in the streets watching live feeds of the shattered hive world. Some cheered, some wept, but all understood what had been done. Humanity had not fought for glory. They had fought for justice, for the orphans who would never see the stars again, and in doing so, they had silenced an empire. In the galaxy beyond, fear became law. Empires that had once mocked humanity now held their breath. Smugglers whispered warnings at starports. Merchants avoided human fleets with trembling hands. "Do not touch Earth," they said. "Do not touch their children, or you will invite fire." And so silence spread across the stars. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of fear. The galaxy had learned a lesson written in blood and flame. Humanity would not be broken. Humanity would not forgive. And when provoked, humanity would answer with fire until no enemy voice remained. The war was over, but the flames still burned in the hearts of humanity. Alien fleets had been reduced to ash. Their hive worlds smoldered under the watch of human dreadnoughts, and the galaxy had gone silent. No empire dared send a ship near Earth's borders. No one dared speak of humans as weak anymore. The message had been carved into the stars. Yet the true victory was not measured in destroyed ships or fallen enemies. It was measured in memory, in the promise that those who were lost would never be forgotten. On Earth, a great ceremony was held, the largest in human history. Billions gathered in person and across holoscreens to witness it. At the center stood a monument of black stone and burning light. Carved into its face were the names of the children and caretakers who had perished in the orphanage bombing. At its base was a simple inscription, "For the ones whose voices became our fire." Admiral Harris stood in front of the monument, his uniform scorched from battle, his eyes weary but unbroken. But he spoke not as a commander but as a father to his people. They thought we would break when they burned our children. They thought we would bow. Instead we rose, and we carried their voices with us. They are not gone. They live here. He placed his hand on the stone, and billions mirrored the gesture wherever they stood. "Every star we see tonight will remember them, and every enemy will know their names." Tears streamed down the faces of civilians and soldiers alike. Pilots who had fought through fire stood with bowed heads. Engineers who had fueled the dreadnoughts clenched fists over their hearts. Parents lifted their children, telling them to remember this day, to remember the price of silence, and to remember the vow that no harm to Earth's young would ever go unanswered again. In orbit above Earth, the victorious fleet returned, their hulls scarred but proud, dreadnoughts glowing faintly as if embers still smoldered within their steel frames. The people looked up at the night sky and saw them as guardians, not machines, every ship a symbol that Earth would never be unprotected again. Elsewhere in the galaxy, fear and respect grew together. Rival empires whispered in their council chambers. The humans answered with fire. Smugglers told hushed stories of dreadnoughts. Appearing from nowhere, merchants rerouted their routes to avoid even passing through human space. Some called the humans demons, others called them avengers, but none denied the truth. Humanity had changed. The orphanage, once only a small, humble, building on a distant colony, became the heart of this change. It was remembered in art, in music, and every oath sworn by a soldier. Children across Earth's colonies now lit candles each night, saying, "This is for them." Every flame was a promise, every light a warning. The galaxy might one day forget the details of the war, but it would never forget that humans fought hardest when their young were threatened. Admiral Harris, though hailed as a hero, never smiled at the victory. He carried the weight of every child's cry, every lost life. His crew often found him alone at the memorial deck of the flagship, staring at the names scrolling across its glass walls. He would whisper quietly, "You are safe now. No one will harm you again." His grief was heavy, but it kept his resolve unshaken. As years passed, the galaxy adjusted to a new balance. Alien empires that had once ruled with fear now spoke cautiously. Treaties were written with trembling hands, borders respected. The silence that spread across the stars was no longer only terror. It became a fragile peace, one built on the memory of fire. But Earth did not forget. They rebuilt the orphanage not as it was, but as a sanctuary of light, a place where children from all colonies, human or alien, could find safety. Its walls were lined with images of the lost. Its halls echoed with laughter of new generations, a symbol that though humanity had answered with vengeance, they had done so to protect the innocent, not to destroy them. And so the flame did not die. It lived in the dreadnoughts that now patrolled the stars. It lived in the monuments carved into stone and steel. It lived in the eyes of children who knew their world would never abandon them. It lived in every whispered story across the galaxy. Never harm Earth's children. Never awaken their fire. The galaxy had feared Earth's silence before. Now it feared Earth's memory. And from that day forward, whenever the stars turned red at dusk, people remembered the orphanage, remembered the boy's cry, remembered the fire that answered, and they whispered in awe and in fear, "Do not touch Earth, or you will know the flame that never dies."